What's going on, guys? Welcome to another tank build video. In this video I'm going to be going through my Sorcerer dungeon tank build. The Sorcerer, while it may not be as popular for a tank as the Dragonite, the Arcanist and the Necro, it actually makes a really good tank. This build is going to have pretty much infinite sustain thanks to Dark Deal and Balance, using the two together to get our resources back constantly. It's got really good block mitigation thanks to Bound Aegis, and it also has access to some really nice buffs for us and our group, such as the exploitation passive. Just like in my usual build videos, we're going to cover everything such as CP, race, skills, everything that we need in order to set up for this build and make it extremely good for dungeon tanking. Just as a reminder, if you do watch any of my videos and find them useful, please do leave a like on the video, please subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment if you have any questions for me. Thank you. So let's get into the build. So first of all, starting off with race. So my Sorc tank is actually a Dark Elf. This is just because it used to be a DD, and I use this for my tank. It works absolutely fine for dungeons. My first choice of tank would actually be a Nord. So if you're making one from scratch, I would go with a Nord. But ultimately, any race that you have on a Sorc will work absolutely fine for dungeons. Some just work a little bit better than others for tanking, but you can use honestly anything. So the race doesn't matter quite as much, but if you are going to make one from scratch, then again, go with the Nord. For my high elf, for my dark elf, sorry, the main benefits that I get is almost 2k mag and stam, a little bit of flame resistance, but again, we're not really too worried about our passives on here. The main one is this one, because it's going to help our overall max stats. For the Mundus stone, I am running the Atronach for the additional mag recovery. This is the one that I usually run on tanks, and I do find that it works best overall. For the consumables, the two options I always go through are food that give you max resources, like Bullet Sugar Skulls or Longfin Pasty. Option number two are ones that give you recoveries, like Jewels of Misrule or Smoked Bear Hunch. Now usually the one that I advise, the one that I use, is Bullet Sugar Skulls. However, on a Sorc, I actually, like not following the trend, go with the recovery food. So for example, Jewels of Misrule. The reason I go with this on a Sorc is because we already have quite high max resources, and this is to do with the passives and also skills slotted that we have on the Sorcerer. So we're getting additional health and additional magic on the Sorc, which means the max resources that I normally aim for, which is about 20k plus on my stam and mag, is already achieved without needing to use Bullet Sugar Skulls. So because of that, I go with the recovery food just to get the extra stamina and magicka recovery. So that's the reason why I am using Jewels of Misrule on this build. For the pots, the same two options as always on our tank. We have number one, the Crown Restoration pots, and we also have the player crafted tri-stat pots as well. They both basically do the same thing. They're going to give you health, mag and stam back immediately, and then they're also going to give you the three elements of recovery, so giving you health, mag and stam recovery for a period of time. So those are the pots that we are generally always going to use. For the gear sets, first of all, I am using the Master's Sword and Board on the front bar. The Puncturing Remedy set is whenever we use our front bar taunt, we are going to heal, and we're also going to get physical and spell resistances as well. So overall, a really nice set to run when we're using a 5-piece set that can be backbarred. And the set that we are using that's backbarred is Powerful Assault. So with Powerful Assault, whenever you cast an assault ability in combat, you give weapon and spell damage to your group, which is going to increase your burst damage during the dungeons. So this is a really nice set to run for dungeons overall. And because you only need to have an assault ability slotted on one bar, that allows you to put that on the back bar and therefore run the Master's Sword and Board on the front bar for that extra healing and extra resistances when we need it. The other 5-piece set that I'm running is Turning Tide. This is again one of my favourites in dungeons because of the major vulnerability that we give. So whenever you block, you gain the Flowing Water buff for 10 seconds. When you have that buff up on your buff tracker and you bash an enemy, you apply major vulnerability to anything within a 5 by 10 meter line in front of you. So basically you're applying major vulnerability to a wide area of enemies. And what that's doing is increasing the damage that they take by 10%. So it's going to overall increase our group's damage, same as Powerful Assault. The monster set that I'm running is Archdruid. The reason I'm running this is for the same reason as Turning Tide. We're getting major vulnerability, and using this with Turning Tide, we're able to have basically a full uptime on that major vulnerability debuff on the enemies. So this is procced by a heavy attack. So when your Turning Tide major vulnerability is wearing off after 10 seconds, then you use a heavy attack on the boss or whatever it is that you're fighting to reapply the major vulnerability. In terms of like gear, traits and enchants and everything, starting off with the front bar, I'm running Decisive Absorb Stamina. The Decisive trait's giving us a bit of ulti back, and the Absorb Stamina enchantment is basically just helping our stam sustain a little bit. For the shield, and actually for all the body pieces, we're running a combination of Sturdy, Reinforced and Divines, and we have the Tri-Stack glyph on everything, just to give basically higher max resources on like our stam, mag and health. So I have 3 Reinforced on the chest, the legs and the boots, and then I have a number of Divines. I have Divines on the head, Divines on the shoulders, and then a few sturdy pieces on the other small bits as well. We're going 5 heavy, 1 medium, 1 light, the medium on the helmet and the light on the shoulders. The other body pieces are all heavy. And this is just to help the overall passive from the Undaunted skill line to give us a bit more recoveries. For the back bar staff, we're running an ice staff as always. We have an infused crusher enchant on this to reduce the armor of whatever we apply our elemental blockade to. So this is going to help get our group to the penetration cap that we need to. And then finally for the jewellery, I'm running infused with reduce mag cost of spells. Sustain on this build is overall really good, to be honest, so this just helps balance it a little bit by reducing the cost of any mag skills that we use. If you want, you can go mag recovery instead of reduce magicka cost. Both work pretty similar. If you find that your stam sustain's a bit worse, then feel free to swap the mag to stam. So for example, stam recovery or reduce stam cost of skills as well. You can also go harmony trait instead of infused. However, I prefer going with infused for dungeons because I don't tend to get as many synergies as I would in a trial situation. For the champion points, we're running the 4 blue mitigation CP. So we're running Ironclad for reduced damage from direct damage. We're running Enduring Resolve to reduce damage over time. We are running Duelist Rebuff to reduce our single target damage taken, and then finally Unassailable to reduce the damage from AoEs. For the red tree, this is kind of a bit more flexible on the Sorc. We are generally not using a shield unless you do slot the Sorc shield, which we will come to in the skills section of this video. And if you do slot the Sorc shield, then you can benefit from things like Bastion. But I only slot that kind of half the time for some boss fights, so overall I don't slot Bastion, I don't find I need it. The main 2 that I'm running are Boundless Vitality for the extra health, and Fortified for the extra resistances, helping me get to my resistance cap or close to. So these 2 I basically always run. I'm running Celerity just for the extra movement speed in dungeons, it's quite nice to have. And then I've got Expert Evasion, which is giving me a free roll dodge every 30 seconds. You can also run like Rejuvenation or Sustain by Suffering for a bit of extra recoveries, but on this build I don't find that I really need the extra recovery. And again, because I'm only half the time slotting a Sorc shield, I don't really find that I need the Bastion either, to be honest. The shield's already pretty good. So next, going on to the skills. So I'm going to go through my bar setup that I run, and then I'll show at the end a couple of things that you can change if you want to, for certain situations like certain boss fights or ad pulls. So first of all, Silver Leash. This skill is our add control skill. So whenever we use this on an enemy, we're going to pull it towards us, which is going to help to stack ad pulls up a little bit and make them die quicker. so this is a nice one to run. Bound Aegis is a really nice skill on a Sorc. This has given us a number of different benefits. So first of all, just by having it slotted on either bar, we're getting our max mag increased by 8%. And this is what I was talking about earlier when it comes to running the Bewitched Sugar Skulls food. I don't find I need it because we're getting a nice chunk of max mag already from this skill. Also, for having it slotted, we're getting minor resolve. So that's our 3k resistances that we're getting from that. And we're also getting minor protection as well. So that's reducing our damage taken by 5% overall. Now, you don't have to activate this skill very often. The times when you can activate it is whenever you're taking sort of a big heavy attack or you're taking a lot of damage. This is going to increase the amount of damage that you can block by 40% for a period of time. So activate this whenever you kind of need that extra damage mitigation, but overall, just by having it slotted on your bar, you're getting all of the benefits down in that bottom section of the skill description. With the sustain on this build, you can actually basically keep this skill up all the time, cast it every 5 seconds and just get loads more damage mitigation. The next skill that we're using is Dark Deal. This skill we're using for a couple of different reasons. So first of all, whenever we use it, we're going to spend Magicka and we're going to get health and stamina back. It's also going to give us some stamina back over time as well. The other reason why we're running Dark Deal is actually to proc our exploitation passive. So whenever we cast a dark magic ability, we're giving minor prophecy to our group. And minor prophecy is a nice buff to have for our DDs to increase our damage. We're not really generally going to use the other skills on this skill line, so this is the one that we're using to proc that exploitation passive. So we basically have to cast this every 20 seconds. Now, I generally cast it a lot more than that because it's really nice for sort of like a little burst heal and also for the extra stamina recovery as well. The only thing to be aware of is when you cast this skill, it is going to drop your block. So for example, I'm holding block now. When I cast this skill, you can see it drop for a second. The other thing to note is if you use it and then hold block, the skill won't go off. So if you cast it, hold block, it won't go off. And it does also stop you from bar swapping. So you have to wait for the skill to be completely over and then you can bar swap. And same again, wait for it to be over and then you can block again. But it is a nice skill. I would recommend it mostly for that exploitation passive, but also for the health and stam that we get. The next skill that we're running is the Unstable Clanfear. This is our kind of main burst heal really. So whenever we cast this, and just to make you aware, the pet does have to be alive. So the pet can die in combat, or if you log out and it's not already alive, or you change skill and it's not alive for whatever reason, you have to bring it alive first. You have to summon it. Once you've done that, you can then use the button that you put it on your skill bar, and that will give you a burst heal of around about 13,000 health. It will also heal the Clanfear whenever you use this, so just make sure that you do use this skill sometimes, because otherwise your Clanfear might die and then it's not available for you to use to heal yourself. Also, you have to note that this needs to be slotted on both bars. If you don't have it slotted on both bars, when you switch to the bar that you don't have it slotted on, it will die. So for example, there you go, you just saw it die there because it's not slotted on this bar. So make sure that you slot it on both bars. I like to have it on the same skill, so I have that burst heal available on either bar on that particular button. But yeah, that's quite a nice one to run for our burst heal. And then finally, our front bar taunt is Pierce Armor. This is going to give major and minor breach, it's going to taunt the enemy, and it's also going to proc our Master's Sword and Shield set that we looked at before. So overall, this is the taunt that we're going to run. Our front bar ultimate is going to be Barrier. We're only really running this for, well, you can use the skill if you need a barrier, or if your group needs a barrier at any particular moment, but the main reason that we're having it slotted on our front bar overall is to give us this 10% mag recovery all of the time, just for having it slotted. So when we're on our front bar, we're getting that extra 10% mag recovery. Onto the back bar, we're using Elemental Blockade. Whenever we put this down, we're going to use it to apply our Crusher enchant on our back bar Ice Staff, which is going to reduce the resistances of enemies well, the enemy that we apply it to. Razor Caltrops, we're running this to proc our powerful assault set. So this is the assault ability that we have on the back bar. The reason I'm running this skill and not something like Echoing Vigor, which by the way you can absolutely run as an alternative to this. The reason I'm running Caltrops is because whenever we apply this, we're going to apply Major Breach to all of the enemies in that area. On bosses, you maybe don't need that. If it's just a single boss, we only need to apply Major Breach in one way, and we're going to do that through our Pierce Armor Taunt anyway. But on boss fights where there's enemies or adds that are coming into it as well, this is just going to apply Major Breach to all of them without you needing to stab every single one with your Pierce Armor. So generally, this is the skill I'm running. But again, if you don't need to apply Major Breach to everything, maybe there's not a lot of adds, maybe it's a boss fight where there's no adds, then feel free to drop this for Echoing Vigor, which will give your DDs a little bit of extra healing. And the major resolve skill that we're using is going to be Balance. This is first of all giving us our 6k resistances, our major resolve, which is a really important buff for us as a tank, but this is also giving us Magicka back whenever we cast it. And when combined with Dark Deal, we're going to be having sort of infinite resources because we're basically spending 4,800 health in order to get some Magicka back, and then we're using a small amount of that Magicka to get 8k health and 3,600 stamina. So by combining these two together, our sustain is basically infinite. I use these two skills quite often on the Sorc in order to manage my resources and always keep them high. I'll generally cast Dark Deal while I'm running between ad pools and often while I'm in fights as well. And then Balance, just keep up all the time for your major resolve most importantly, and then use it whenever you need the mag back. And then cast either Dark Deal or your Clan Fear to get the health back if you need it. The Clan Fear is obviously a skill we've already talked about. It needs to be slotted on both bars, so that one's sitting there as well. And then finally, Frost Clench. This is our range taunt. It's also applying Major Maim to whatever we apply it to. So this is a skill that we're generally going to run just for that range taunt and for the Major Maim. Then finally, our back bar ultimate is going to be Aggressive Horn. This is given two things. It's given max resources to us and our allies, and it's also given the Major Force buff, which is increasing the crit damage by 20%. So this is generally the ultimate that we're going to be using on our Sorc tank. Now, in terms of skills that you can switch up a little bit, Silver Leash, often you don't need this on boss fights. Sometimes on boss fights you do have adds that you need to pull in, but sometimes you don't. You can swap this out for something like Conjured Ward. Now, I purposely haven't morphed this because both morphs are very nice and I wanted to talk about both. So Hardened Ward is going to give a bigger damage shield. It's actually going to give about an 18,000 damage shield, which is really nice. So this is potentially a morph you're going to want if you're taking a lot of damage. Alternatively, the other morph is still going to give us a 13.5k damage shield, which is pretty solid. But this is also going to give minor intellect and minor endurance to us and our allies as well. So they're going to get mag and stam recovery as well as ourselves. And I find that the 13.5k damage shield is quite nice. So on boss fights, feel free to swap Silver Leash for Regenerative Ward if you want that. And again, if you do run that, going back to champion points, that's when the CP like Bastion will help to increase the damage shield on this. Other skills that you can change, and I wouldn't change any more on the front bar. I think these are all pretty important to run. But that's the main sort of flex spot on the front bar. For the back bar, as we've already said, you can swap Razor Caltrops out for Echoing Vigor. This is just going to give a little heal over time to us and our group. And we need to make sure that we have one assault ability slotted to proc our powerful assault set. The other skill that you can change if you want is Frost Clench. You don't always need a range taunt. If you do, then keep Frost Clench on, but if you don't, you could swap it, especially on ad pools, for something like Pulsar, which is going to reduce the health of the enemies that we apply it to, making things like trash packs die a lot faster. So that's one option that you can also swap. the final one I think is with balance. We also actually have another major resolve skill on the Sorc, which is Boundless Storm. Boundless Storm, the main difference is you're not going to get the magicka back whenever you cast this. It actually costs magicka. So unlike balance, we're not going to be able to use it to get mag back. However, it does give us a little bit of extra movement speed, so it can be used on fights where you need extra speed, or maybe while you're running between ad pulls. This will just give you a little bit of extra movement speed, so that's our alternative major resolve skill on the Sorc. For the attributes, we'll go on to next. Again, as I always say, when setting up your attributes, make sure you've got all your gear on, all your skills slotted, all your CP, and do the attributes last. What I've done is I've first of all put some into health to aim for about 40k health. As you can see, I'm sat just 9 below that, so I'm as close to 40k as I can be. And then the rest I've put into stam and magicka to make sure that they're both sort of as high as possible, but I'd like them both to be over 20k, and I want my stam to be just a little bit higher than my mag. So that's how I've set up my attributes. While we're on the character sheet, if I buff up with my major resolve, I already have my minor from having Bound Aegis slotted. You can see I'm about 28-29k on the resistances, and whenever I use my master's sword and board, that's going to go up to around the resistance cap or close to. And to be honest, even with 28k, 29k, that's absolutely fine for dungeons. So my resistances are pretty good. My mag recovery is really nice already at 1500, and with balance we've got just an infinite source of magicka anyway, so mag recovery is really nice. The stam's at 1k, which is already pretty good, but again we have Dark Deal to give us loads of stamina back whenever we need it. And the health recovery is a little bit lower on the Sorc, especially with me running the Jewels of Misrule. You can get a little bit more health recovery if you go with the more expensive food, which is smoked bear hunch. That's going to give you 400 extra health recovery if you run that food instead of Jewels of Misrule. However, I find that the health recovery is perfectly sufficient because we have two forms of getting our health back. We have Dark Deal, and we also have the Clanfear as well. So our health recovery, I find, is perfectly sufficient for what we need. And that's it for the build, guys. So thank you as always for watching, guys. I would definitely recommend the build. If you haven't tried Sorc before, definitely give it a go. It is really fun to play on, and although it's not used as common as some of the other tank classes, it is really capable as a tank, and it is fun to play, so give it a go. As always, please do leave a like on the video if you found anything useful. Please subscribe to my channel, and always feel free to leave a comment for me if you have any questions for anything tank related. And I'll see you in the next one.